If you feel like no one wants to attend your free trainings or your launches, or you're doing a webinar and no one shows up, I guarantee it's because you have a disjointed funnel and maybe you're even missing a runway. Well, today in this episode, we're talking about how to create messaging in a cohesive funnel that creates demand and how to use that to create an amazing runway for your launch. So keep listening. Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about messaging. We're going to be talking about messaging in a funnel. We're going to be talking about runways. We're going to be talking about all the stuff that most people don't talk about when it comes to launching and building an online business. Now, obviously, messaging is our jam. If you are in our Video Forex program, well, you know how deep we get to go with messaging. If you're in our mentorship program, well, you know, I guess, how deep we go with all of our messaging. But for those of you who are not in our programs, have not seen our training called Messaging in a Funnel, what I want to do today is talk about messaging when it comes to the next step. Like, we talk about messaging when it comes to content. We call that very much top of funnel. So you talk about top of funnel, your everyday ongoing content, the stuff that's supposed to be building an audience and creating demand and all of that good stuff. Well, today we're going to talk about layer number 2. Now, we do talk about messaging in a funnel inside of our programs. Like, how do we carry the same message all the way through a funnel? Here's the biggest problem that I see with people trying to build an online business. And it goes back to a lot of the roots of what we've heard so many people say for a lot of years, which is just add value, give away your best stuff for free, give out a free training, then pitch your program, right? And what tends to happen is we create, or most people will create what I call a disjointed funnel. And what a disjointed funnel is, and maybe you've heard me talk about it on the podcast once or twice, but a disjointed funnel is a result of the old ways of running an online business, where we create a ton of content, usually in the form of tutorials or how-to content on that front end. We usually do things like survey our audience and give our audience everything that they want, as if we're a servant to our audience. I mean, we want to serve our audience, but we should be the manufacturer or the creator of our own message and our own content that then attracts the audience. We don't just bend over backwards for our audience all the time, but that's what most people do. And what happens is we get very generalized messaging. We get very generalized audience as well, because people come to us for information, if we're lucky. Obviously, that doesn't work anymore. And if you've been listening to podcasts for any amount of time, you know that doesn't really work anymore, because when we just give out tutorials and another expert who's competing against us gives out tutorials, we're essentially going to be saying the same thing, or at least the audience will perceive us as saying the same thing. And that's what most people do. And some people can build an audience that way. Most will hit a plateau at some point, and you might be there too. Well, when we go to phase number 2 of this, is like, okay, great. If we are lucky enough to build an audience, what most people will do is they'll create a free training. It could be a webinar, a challenge, a video series, something along those lines, workshop. And what they'll do is they'll look at their audience and they'll go, what can I do to educate my audience more? And they create some kind of free training. And then what they do is they try to lure their audience and even cold traffic to this free training. So they talk about benefits, why you need to be here, what you're going to get from this free training, and all of that stuff. Now, the problem is you're luring people from step to step to step to step. And luring people is not the same thing as creating demand. And we're going to show you how to fix all of that today. But let me reveal how this is a big problem. Because then what happens when they get to the free training, you give out your best stuff for free, you give out information, then you have to awkwardly transition into the pitch of your program, your course, or your service. And you do the same thing again. You try to lure people in. And everything is a get someone to this step, lure them to the next one, get them to this step, lure them to the next one. And then so you start talking about the benefits and the modules and the videos instead of creating demand, instead of creating effective messaging. And this is what a disjointed funnel is because it's like, here's one step that doesn't really, which is my top of funnel content. Then I'm going to get them to step number 2, which is the free training, which is not really always related to that top of funnel, not always really related to the video content that you're doing or the podcast that you're doing. Then you're going to try to get them to the next step, which is buying your program. When in fact, you should have one cohesive message all the way through. And I'm going to put this in really simple terms. This is as simple as it gets. If someone is paying attention to your content on the front end, your top of funnel, there's a theme, there's a topic, there's something that people are really resonating with. Just give them more of that and carry that one single message all the way through your funnel. It blows my mind how few people actually do this. And again, it's if you're realizing, oh shoot, I have that disjointed funnel, I'm luring people from step to step. Don't worry. That's what's been taught by the industry for a really long time. And look, it can still work sometimes, but it's hard. It's like swimming upstream. Where are you going to find some people that can swim upstream? Of course, always. But would you rather be the person swimming upstream or downstream? For me, I'd rather be the person swimming downstream. And it's been taught that way for a really long time. But again, when we have more and more experts and more competitors coming into the space, this idea of luring people from step to step to step and disjointed funnels, it doesn't really work. One of the reasons why it works so well is that when you have a course on how to, grow on Instagram, whoops, let me turn that off. When you have a course on how to grow on Instagram and you're the only one teaching how to grow on Instagram, you can have a disjointed funnel and lure people from step to step because there's no other options. They want to grow on Instagram. You're the only choice. Therefore, you can be a not great marketer and still see success. Disjointed funnel, whatever. Now, when you have 5 competitors, 10 competitors, 20 competitors, all teaching Instagram, having a disjointed funnel doesn't really work because they have more selection. So we have to find a unique angle. We have to warm people up. We have to have messaging that's consistent all the way through. And I'm going to give you guys an example of this, and then we're going to get into the details of how to create this messaging, but also how to create a runway. And we're going to talk about that in a second. When we did our last launch, which was our best launch by far, we had one major theme all the way through our entire funnel, which the main theme was that how-to content isn't how to build an audience quickly anymore. Like if you do 100% how-to content, you're likely plateaued. And that was our theme. Like that was our top of funnel content. We talked about a lot of that on the podcast. We talked a lot about in our upfront content. We did a free training that continued that same message. The free training was here's how to grow online without using endless amounts of how-to content like Simon Sinek and Gary Vaynerchuk. Let's go a little bit deeper. We did that with a little like mini workshop. And then we went even deeper with that same theme inside of a video series. And then when we pitched the program, we offered the program. People already wanted it before we even revealed, what it entailed. And we'll talk about that as well. But we positioned it as here's how to create really effective content without needing how-to content. It was one consistent theme from the very first contact people saw us all the way to the sales page. And the difference is that it was the same message, but we just went deeper with that message, the deeper people got in the funnel. Right message to the right person at the right time. This is a cohesive funnel that creates demand and builds momentum all the way through. Now, if you're just starting a business, I don't care if you are at 0 sales, you've done your first 100K, maybe you're a 7-figure business owner. This episode right here, right now is going to be for you. I'm going to show you from the ground floor. We're going to talk about how to build a runway and messaging through a funnel. Again, it doesn't matter if you're brand spanking new. It doesn't matter if, again, you're a 6 or 7-figure entrepreneur. Chances are you might be missing something, at least 1 or 2 things that we're going to go through today. So the very first thing I want to talk about is this idea of messaging in a funnel. And just to let you guys know, we are going to have a free workshop on this coming up where I'm going to be going in depth on how to craft messaging in a funnel. So we will have a link to that in the show notes as well. I'll give you a URL at the end of this podcast as well, but we will go a little bit deeper with this on that free training. It's actually going to be a 2-day boot camp, free boot camp. I'm not charging you guys anything for this, but let's go through the basics of it now, which is the runway. Now, if you're brand new to business, you may not know what a runway is. If you're a veteran, hopefully you do know what a runway is. But a runway is this thing leading up to the launch. One of the reasons why most people don't have great launches is because they go straight from like, let me email my list or run ads straight to a webinar. And on that webinar, I'm going to pitch. So you go from like cold traffic or maybe some warm traffic right to, hey, I'm going to sell you something. And again, that may have worked in the past, but those times are slowly fading away. What a runway does is it gives you time to not only build an audience, warm up people, but it allows you to create demand for your sales mechanism and your program. And when I say sales mechanism, I mean webinar, video series, challenge, whatever. What most people try to do is they send people right to the sales mechanism and then they try to create demand for their program. And we see problems like, oh my God, my webinar show up rate plummeted. People aren't showing up to my challenges, or they're dropping out halfway through my challenge, or people aren't finishing my video series or even watching. They're opting in, but we only get like 25% watch rate. It's because the days of sending people straight to a sales mechanism without knowing who you are kind of like fading. They're not all the way out. You're going to find people that can still do that, but most people can't, especially if you're starting a brand new business. What a runway does is it's a free training that allows you to build demand for your sales mechanism. What happens is you make the sales mechanism an event. So when we did our last launch, our video series, I didn't just run traffic straight to the video series. We spent 2 or 3 months building demand and momentum for the video series, where the video series was a major event. So it wasn't a sales mechanism anymore. It wasn't this free training anymore. It was this thing that was an event. People were waiting for it. They were in our Facebook group waiting for the day that our video series dropped because it was an event. And a runway allows you to do that. So what we decided to do is we decided to do a free 2-day training. Now, this free training was basically the intro to our video series. Our video series talked about certain things. The things that it didn't talk about went inside this free training. So things like we didn't talk about avatars and stuff like that inside of our video series. So we did a free training talking about avatars, like the first elements of $1 Million messaging. We started talking about that in the boot camp. But that's why we want a runway. We want to just spend time giving someone this amazing, eye-opening, aha, reality-shifting training that they haven't heard before. And that training is designed to warm people up, but create demand for the next step, which is our sales mechanism. Okay. So here was step 1. And this is really step 1 of figuring out your messaging in a funnel. Once you figure out your messaging, and obviously if you're a 4X member or you're in our $1 Million mentorship program, just follow the program and you will figure out your messaging. For those of you who are not in our program yet, one of the things that we do is we create a messaging ecosystem. This is where you know the values, your identities, your content topics, your unique solution, how it's all connected. And what you do is you create an ecosystem through various social media platforms. And when people enter your ecosystem, they get to experience all these elements that create demand, build rapport, give you authority, all of that stuff, right? Thought leadership. Well, once that ecosystem is up and running, what we're going to do is we're going to look at what content within our ecosystem seems to be resonating the most. Again, very simple concept, but not a lot of people talk about this. You look at the content you're doing and which one is resonating the most. Now, we typically won't look at connection content. We usually will look at your what to do content or thought reversal content. And we'll look and see if there's a theme. Is there something that's resonating really well? For us, we started to realize our thought reversal titled How-To Content Isn't How to Build an Audience Fast Anymore did really well. It was like a mind-blowing concept. I talked about it on other people's podcasts and boom, people loved it, right? It was one of the main topics that I talked about, and almost every single time I would get DMs, I would get comments, people would come up to me at events. People would even just want to work with me without even me offering anything. People would come up to me at events that I spoke at and like, how do I work with you? And then I would say, well, we have a $10,000 package. Great. Send me a link. And boom. I didn't pitch anything. This concept worked really, really well because it was a real, and still is a real problem that a lot of people experience of, I'm doing everything the gurus tell me to do and I'm not seeing the results and I've been plateaued for 3 months or more. So we knew this concept was working really, really well. So that was step number one, is what concept is working really, really well? What's one thing that you teach that most people pay attention to? And this is a little counterintuitive, especially if you're new to online business, because most people think I need to add value by giving more and more and more and more. No, just pick one thing that resonates the most with people and then just go a little deeper with that. I mean, there's so many examples of this and proof of this all around you. When you look at Mel Robbins, what was the one thing that really blew her up and took her to the next level? It was her 5-second rule. It was one thing. When you look at, oh gosh, I'm blanking on the guy's name. I know there's gonna be people just yelling at the, yelling at the podcast. The guy who created the hero's journey. Matt, do you know who that is? The guy who created the hero's journey? No. Gosh. Okay. I'm blanking on the name. I apologize for all of you who are yelling at me right now, but the guy who created the hero's journey, which a lot of us use. It's in almost every single movie. It's almost in every single, like people who teach storytelling, it's a standard almost now. That's one thing that he got really well known for. For me, thought reversals have been one thing that have been really, really good for us. And if you can find that one thing that people really resonate with and you carry that all the way through your funnel, you're going to do really well. Now, I know what you're saying. You might be saying, well, Brandon, I do way more than this one thing. I know that. I get that. That's why when they get deeper in the funnel, you start revealing more of what you do. And then when you get to their offer and they're already sold on you because of this one thing, they want to learn this one thing, and then they see everything else on the sales page they're going to get, it's like, holy blank, I'm going to get all of this stuff too. So figure out what that one thing is. And one of the easiest ways to do that is just test. Put your content out there. Podcast episodes, videos, Instagram quotes, whatever, images, captions, whatever, put it all out there. Now, what you're going to do for your runway is you're going to start putting more and more of that type of content out there. Stay within that theme. Do you have to keep saying the same thing over and over again? No, but stay within that theme. So for example, if I was going to talk about how-to content isn't how to build an audience fast, do I need to keep saying that over and over and over again? No. I will say things like, well, what type of content can you do besides how-to content? What are the elements that we can give people to add value besides using educational content all the time? Let me break down how Simon Sinek grew so fast without using how-to content. So I'm finding all of these ideas and all of these themes in different ways of teaching and talking about this same theme leading up to our runway. I run them as through play campaigns. I push it out to my audience. I get on other people's podcasts. I do all of that stuff talking about that one theme. And I gear up for our runway. Well, that is part of our runway. And what I'm really doing is gearing people up for a free training. So then what I'm going to do, and this is what you should do as well, is create a free training that goes a little bit deeper. Hey, do you guys want to learn the first 3 elements you need to create really powerful content without relying on how-to content? Again, it's the same theme. I'm not saying the same thing, but it's a theme, right? So I say, here's a free workshop called, $1 Million Messaging or whatever. It's our $1 Million Messaging. We're going to teach you the 3 elements you need to get started on creating really powerful content without needing endless amounts of how-to content. It's the same theme. So we start getting people to opt in for this free training. And they start getting onto this training and start registering for the training. We get them into a Facebook group. And this is what makes a successful runway. This is one of the things that most people won't do. And we typically want to do this a month to 2 months before our sales mechanism is released. Maybe a month. So maybe start this 2 weeks. So a week and a half before your sales mechanism drops, you should be pushing traffic. You should be running ads. You should be getting people into this free training. Now, you're not pitching anything in this free training. What? I know. Crazy, right? You're not pitching anything. There's a couple of reasons why I like doing this. Number one, the one reason why I like doing this is it's a going against the grain. Most people will never do a free training without pitching something. I think James Wedmore is the one who says this: when other people are zigging, I'm always going to be zagging. And we really take that into consideration with our business. Is I always want to do things differently, especially with communication. I always want to be able to communicate things differently than everyone else out there. So when I do a free training that has no pitch in it, I'm not pitching anything. Guess what? I use that in our ad copy. I use that in our emails. I get to say, free training, no pitch, not selling you anything. It's a free 2-day workshop where we're just adding value to you. We're going to be showing you the elements you need to create $1 million messaging without needing how-to content. So not only am I giving a workshop that I already know people want because it was the data told me from our top of funnel content, I'm using language that they've never seen before, like no pitch. I'm doing a concept they've never seen before, which is a free 2-day workshop I'm not charging for, and there's no pitch for. So people maybe just out of curiosity want to see what I'm doing will show up. But there's all these elements that are different about what we're doing. And I'm telling you right now, if you are a new business owner, or you're just starting out, or even heck, if you're that 7-figure entrepreneur and you haven't been doing this, give it a shot. Because what it's going to do is get more people onto your free trainings. It's going to build rapport. You're going to warm people up. But number 2, it creates demand for your sales mechanism. So what you're going to do, and by the way, actually, let's go here. What you're going to do is create that training, but you're going to give smaller introductory elements that won't be in your sales mechanism. You're going to be coming up with more thought reversal ideas that you can integrate into that training, because remember, there's 2 ways to add value. Number one way to add value is to give people more information. And the second way to add value is to take something away from someone. And what I mean is, if someone has a belief that's causing them suffering or keeping them stuck, and you remove that belief, some may argue that's even more valuable than giving them more information. And if you can incorporate some thought reversals, effective ones, in this Runway training, this free training that you're doing, you will be adding a huge amount of value without giving out a lot of steps. And that's key. There's an art form to it, but that's key. So what you're going to do on this free training is you're going to do the free training. You're going to do some thought reversals. You're going to give them some more information. But here's what you really need to do is you need to embrace open loops. Remember, the intention here is a couple things. Number one, the intention is to connect with them. So inside this free training, you want to talk about your values, your identities, stuff like that. Number 2, you want to add value by removing stuff that's keeping them stuck, so thought reversals. And then number 3, you want to introduce them to some elements that they can use, teach them what to do, not how to do it. But number 4 is you need to create demand for the next step. Remember, we don't want lure marketing. I don't want you to try to convince them to go to the next step when everything's done. I want them to feel like they absolutely need the next step. I want them to feel like they have gotten a huge amount of value and they don't want it to stop. And we do that by adding in open loops. In fact, I've been using it in this podcast. Why? Because the next step for me from this podcast is to have you go on to our free training. And I've been introducing the free training. I've been talking about the free training. I've been saying things like we're going to go over the basics here, but we're going to go more in depth. And that's what the same thing you need to do on your Runway training is add value by giving and taking things away, but also create open loops. What you want to do is you want to say, here's what you're about to learn. Here's what you're going to get from it. And we still need to talk about X, Y, and Z. And I'm going to give that to you on our free training, blah, 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 blah. But let's get into this one step. So an example of this might be like, hey guys, I'm going to teach you our thought reversal framework. Now, remember, there's 9 frameworks that we need for thought reversals. And we have 8 of them on our next training, or we have 8 of them inside of our Video Forex program, or we have 8 of them inside of our video series, whatever you want. But I'm going to give you one now. I'm going to give you the most powerful one now so that you can get this implemented by the end of today. So you've explained what they're about to learn. You opened up a loop. You opened up this idea that there's way more. You told them what the next step is, where they're going to get those 8 other ones. And you also told them why you're only giving them a piece of it now. Their subconscious mind won't think anything of it. They're not gonna be like, wow, why aren't you getting me 8? The subconscious mind goes like, yeah, let's get into it. And on another note, I know there's 8 more. So if they really like that one, well, the mind is automatically going to want the next 8. So if you're doing your runway training and you were able to do that, you're able to show, here's what I'm about to teach you. Here's an open loop of like, there's more over here and here's what the next step is going to be, but I'm only going to give you this one now for this reason. Let's do it. You're creating open loops throughout your training. And if you do that for 2 days in a workshop, it's really, really effective at creating demand for your sales mechanism. So at the end of every training that you do inside of your runway, what you want to do is you want to recap what the training is. You want to give them the benefits that they're going to get from the free training. But then you're going to create a problem. You're going to say something like, if you only take the information that I have today, you're still going to run into this problem, this problem, this problem. And then you're going to give them a CTA, which is the next step, which is why I want you all to go register for our video series coming up, which is why I want you to all go register for our webinar coming up, which is why I all want you to go through our challenge coming up. Okay. So let me just recap, because there's a couple things going on here. Number one, you need a runway if you want an effective launch. Number two, you need cohesive messaging through your entire funnel. The easiest way to do that is to look at your content and find that one thing that people really resonate with. Offer a free training that has no pitch in it, that is in alignment with that theme that people want from your content. While you're teaching, in the middle of that content, you're going to open loops. Before you teach anything and everything, you're going to say, I'm going to give you this one thing here. There's 9 more or 2 more or 1 more over on this next step. You're going to tell them what that next step is. Then you're going to tell them why you're only giving them one piece of it. And then you're going to teach it. And you're going to do that all the way through the training. When you're done with the training, you're going to recap what the training was, the major points. You're going to give them the benefits they're going to get from those things. You're going to create a problem that's going to come up in their life if they only have that information. And then the call to action to get more information is the next step in your funnel. You're not luring anyone. You're creating demand. What this does is it creates a feeling internally that I need this, I want this, give me more. And the last note, if you're able to add value by giving out information, but also doing thought reversals and taking away things from them, you will create a huge amount of demand for your sales mechanism. Okay. A runway is the most important thing that you can do inside of a launch. In our last launch, I might mess up the number, but I believe 40% of our sales attended our runway training. 40%. And in fact, our runway training was so effective just following the steps that I gave you that people told us they would have bought. They didn't even have to watch the video series in order to buy. They would have bought at the end of that training. And I'm gonna give you an example here of how we did this. But one last thing, 2 notes that I would say is when you're doing your runway and you're creating messaging in a funnel, I would highly recommend the runway training be live and interactive. We've done this twice on 2 big launches. The first time we did it, it was just a pre-recorded 30-minute training, and it did okay, but 40% of our sales did not come from that training. Then we did it as a 2-day live experience for free with no pitch, and it was off the charts. I think we had like 750 plus people attend live. Like, it was nuts. It was crazy. And this partly because we also gave a paid experience for free. Like, this workshop would have been something that people would have normally charged $47, $97 for. We made it free. Okay, so those are 2 things. Now, the thing that you have to be aware of is that your messaging has to be cohesive. Your messaging has to be dialed in order for this to work. So you guys have everything, you have the outline of how to create a really effective runway. But we still have to fill that runway up with really effective messaging. And like I said, we are doing a workshop. It's a 2-day workshop, just like our last runway training. It's a 2-day live workshop with me. where we're going to break down the elements of messaging in a funnel. How do you carry messaging from the very first moment someone watches a video into an ad, into a runway training, from the runway training into a sales mechanism, from the sales mechanism all the way to the sales page? How do you do that so it's cohesive? People want to go to the next step. They're not lured to the next step. They have a subconscious impulse to want and demand to want to go to the next step all the way through. How do you make it one cohesive funnel? And we are going to be doing that workshop fairly soon. So if you do want to register for that training, I highly recommend you do, especially if you're having problems getting people to show up to your sales mechanism, or you just have no idea how to create cohesive messaging. What I would do is go to brandonlucero.com, LUCERO/workshop. So if you go to brandonlucero.com/workshop, we have our messaging in a funnel training. It's going to show you how to craft messaging in a funnel. Even if you're brand new, I don't care if you're just starting out. If you're just starting out, in fact, you should be there more than anybody else, because the last thing I want you to do is to go 6 months down the wrong path, trying to do things the old way that clearly don't work anymore, and then have to come back to us. We might not even be doing this training again. So even if you're brand spanking new, you're just starting a business, you don't feel like you're ready, you have to start in the right direction. Even if you're the 7-figure entrepreneur or right in the middle and in between, I'm guaranteeing you right now that what we're going to be showing you on this workshop when it comes to messaging in a funnel, it's not taught by anyone else. I would say 90% of people are still teaching you the old way of create a free training, lure people to the next step. Nothing's consistent. Add value, survey your audience, give them everything they want. No. I'm going to show you how to craft a message that's so powerful people are enrolled into it, how to communicate on a subconscious level so you create a feeling of demand inside your audience, and you get them to willingly go every single step along the way with you. That's what we're going to show you how to do. So again, go to brandonlucero.com/workshop, brandonlucero.com/workshop. And we're going to break down over 2 days. It's a 2-day boot camp. I think it's about an hour or two a day. Will actually be about an hour of training and then probably 2 to 3 hours of Q&A and stuff like that each day. Go to brandonlucero.com/workshop, and we're going to break this down for you absolutely for free. Okay. So with that said, head over there now. And for everyone else that thinks they have their messaging dialed in, is not attending, well, I guess I'll see you in the next episode, but hopefully we see everyone there. So head over there now, brandonlucero.com/workshop. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested. And thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.